Sometimes bad people don't get what they deserve. I'm Adam with Most Amazing, and this is the top 10 evil people who should be locked away for life. Starting at number 10, it's Chris Brown. Yes, I'm talking about the fact that Chris Brown brutally attacked Rihanna. The two musicians were set to perform for the 2009 Grammys, but neither would go on to do that, as an argument that broke out in Brown's Lamborghini over Brown being unfaithful turned physical. You have likely seen the pictures of Rihanna after the incident. It's honestly pretty disgusting. What's worse is that Brown was only sentenced to 5 years probation, 1 year of domestic counseling, and 6 months of community service. Clearly that didn't matter though, as in 2013, while still on his probation, Brown and his bodyguard spent only 36 hours in jail after they were caught for beating someone up. However, when they showed up to court after the altercation, their sentence was reduced even more to a misdemeanor and the pair were released. Brown was also ordered to return to his California probation officer within 48 hours, to stay at least 100 yards away from the man, and he got 1,000 hours of extra community labor added to his sentence. Now if you watch any interview with him talking about either incident, he doesn't care, and actually kind of blames the victims. He should have served time. Period. Number 9. Lynette Squeaky Fromme. In 1967, Lynette Fromme met Charles Manson in Venice, California, and joined his growing family at Spahn Ranch. Now, while Fromme did not participate in any of the infamous Manson killings, she remained devoted to the family after their arrest. She hung around outside the courthouse and carved an X into her forehead just like the others did. But it didn't stop there. After the fact, Fromme moved to Sacramento, where she and 4 others were arrested for the passing of James and Lauren Willett. The other 4 confessed, and Fromme was the only one of them to avoid charges. Fromme finally did end up being behind bars for the events of September 5th, 1975, when she pulled and aimed an unloaded weapon at President Gerald R. Ford. She was indeed convicted of the attempted life-taking of the president and sentenced to life in prison. That sounds like the end, but even in prison, she attacked another inmate with a hammer and briefly escaped federal prison camp in an attempt to reunite with Manson. She also remained devoted to him after his other followers had renounced him. Life in prison was also a bit of a lie, as in 2009, at age 60, Fromme was paroled and relocated to a small town in Juanita County, New York. Number 8. Sandra Good. Yep, I got another Manson family member. Sandra Good linked up with Manson in 1968 and lived with the family on Spahn Ranch. She did not participate in the Tate/LaBianca incidents, as she and another member had been arrested on August 8th for using stolen credit cards, but despite the crimes, she still remained loyal to Manson for years. In 1975, she and Manson follower Susan Murphy were arrested for sending nearly 200 letters to various corporate executives that threatened the executives and US government officials with death if they did not, quote, forthwith stop polluting the air and water and destroying the environment. She was sentenced to 15 years, but she would only serve 10 before being released in 1985. She was not allowed to return to California as a condition of her parole, so she instead moved to Vermont, where she took up another name. When her parole actually ended though, she uprooted her whole life and moved to Hanford, California to be closer to where Manson was being imprisoned. We know that at least until 2006, Good was still a loyal supporter, calling into talk shows to claim Manson's innocence. We don't know where Sandra Good lives now, but she is 78 years old. Number 7. O.J. Simpson. Orenthal James Simpson, or O.J. Simpson, also nicknamed The Juice, is an American former football running back, broadcaster, actor, advertising spokesman, and convicted felon. But of all that, he is best known for the last one, for being tried for taking the lives of his former wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman, in 1994. He was acquitted in an extremely high-profile criminal trial, but he was found liable for their passing in civil court, and pretty much everyone and their mums is sure that he did it. What I actually did not know is that in addition to that, Simpson was actually sentenced to up to 33 years in prison for the kidnapping and robbery of 2 sports memorabilia dealers in a Las Vegas hotel room in 2007, but only 10 years later, he was released from prison on October 1st, 2017 after being granted parole. Number 6. Don King. Don King has promoted some of the biggest boxing fights of all time. fights that included names like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, George Foreman, and Roy Jones Jr. However, despite his success, he has also been accused and sued by many fighters for stealing money, which brought numerous lawsuits. He was also charged with tax evasion multiple times but never got convicted. But before all of that, Don King actually ended the lives of two people in separate incidents. In 1954, King fired at a man when he caught him breaking into one of his gambling houses. A jury ruled this as, quote, justifiable, and no charges were filed because America, sorry. Fast forward to 1966, and King was actually convicted in the second degree when he took the life of someone who owed him just $600. This time around, the judge, for some reason, reduced his conviction, giving him only a 4-year sentence, but he later received a full pardon from the Ohio governor at the time. So yes, he walked away practically scotch-free and enjoyed success while two men lost their lives. Number 5. William Bradford Bishop Jr. William Bradford Bishop Jr. made the FBI's most wanted list for brutally taking the life of his wife, mother, and family, and then disappearing in 1976. In the next few years, witnesses have claimed to have seen him in several different locations overseas, but to this day, he still has not been caught. Interestingly, Bishop wasn't actually added to the list until 2014 when the Bureau had produced an age-advanced image of him to try and aid in his capture, but it failed to turn up any leads, and 2 years later, he was dropped from the FBI's most wanted list without actually being captured. If he is actually still alive, he would now be 84 years old, but honestly, we just might not ever know, which is not a good thought to have. It's a shame that he will never face justice. Number 4. Alexis Flores. In late July of the year 2000, a girl's body was discovered near an apartment building after being previously reported missing. Extremely and understandably angry protesters identified the culprit as a homeless man who had recently been hanging around the area named Carlos. Now, Carlos fled immediately after the event and nobody was able to find him. Years later, in Phoenix, a man named Alexis Flores was arrested in 2 separate incidents in 2002 and 2004, and he was eventually sentenced to prison. As a mandatory part of his prison sentence, a DNA sample was taken from Flores before he was released from prison in 2005 and deported back to Honduras. His DNA was entered into a national database in 2006, and in March 2007, it was matched to the July 2000 incident, with Flores determined to be the homeless Carlos. Authorities immediately issued a warrant for Flores' arrest, but he was long gone, having been deported over a year before. So to this day, authorities have been unable to locate Flores, and he is still considered and dangerous. Number 3. Robert William Fisher. Robert Fisher is another member of the FBI's most wanted list. Robert Fisher took the life of his wife and family before blowing up the house that they lived in Scottsdale, Arizona, way back in April of 2001. He has been described as a control freak towards his family. He and his wife would fight a lot, and Fisher was not a great father. Fisher was also very controlling about the house they lived in, not allowing the walls in the house to be painted anything other than white, and only allowing a small number of pictures of his choosing on the walls. Unfortunately, because the extensive publicity Fisher's case received during its nearly 20 years on the FBI's most wanted list has not resulted in his successful location and or capture, his case no longer fills the criteria to make the list, but he is still at large and the FBI is still investigating. He would be 60 years old today. Number 2. Bible John. Scotland's manhunt for Bible John has turned up multiple suspects over the years, but his identity has never been proven in the 45 and more years since the passing of Patricia Docker, 25, Jemima McDonald, 32, and Helen Puttock, 29. All 3 of these victims had met the killer at the same Glasgow club, the Barrowland Ballroom. The key information in the case came from Helen Puttock's sister, Jean, who had driven in the same taxi as her sister and the suspected killer the night Helen passed on. Jean's information helped investigators form a psychological profile of the killer, and the man's many Bible references led to the Bible John nickname, but like I said, he was never actually found. And in at number 1 is the Zodiac. The Zodiac is perhaps the most infamous unsolved serial killer case in the United States. As you might know, if not partially thanks to the famous movie, the Zodiac taunted police by sending investigators and the press cryptic messages, only one one of which was ever actually conclusively solved. There has been an open case file on the Zodiac killer since 1969, and in total, 5 lost lives have been definitively linked to the case, with as many as 37 other victims possibly being connected. There have been numerous suspects over the years, but this is one case that will likely remain unsolved for a long time to come. It's also one that is incredibly bone-chilling. That's all for now. This is Most Amazing. Ta-ta and farewell.